The Ewha Campus Complex, ECC of Ewha University of Seoul, built by the architect Dominique Perrault between 2003 and 2008. Once upon a time, there was an American Methodist missionary who wished to evangelize Korean girls. In 1898, she bought a 55-hectare plot a few kilometers from Seoul. From the 30s onwards, the campus developed. English Tudor-style buildings with pointed roofs that still give the place its identity. "70 buildings are spread across a site of hills and wooded valleys. Each is devoted to a particular discipline, law, biology, or music. In 2003, Ewha, the elite university, decided to put up a new building to keep students on the campus after lecture time. A multifunction building for which uses needed to be invented. The university organized an international architectural competition and chose for the new building the site of a former stadium below the 5 oldest edifices. The finalists were the London-based agency FOA, the Iraqi architect Zaha Hadid, and the French architect Dominique Perrault. He called his project the Ewha Valley and won the competition. He has designed many buildings, including the Bibliothèque Nationale de France in Paris, the Olympic Velodrome in Berlin, and the Applix factory. Seoul spread widely over the century. The Ewha University is now in the center of the city, opening onto a lively district of shops and cafes. The architect continued the street and designed a large esplanade, a crossroads, and a plaza. It is the entrance to the campus. From the esplanade, 2 directions can be taken. One leads up a path across a garden, another downwards along a stone-paved valley between glass and metal cliffs. A gentle slope leads to the foot of a monumental staircase, punctuated by landings, that rises towards the old central administration building. Going through the valley, you cross the new building without even realizing it. To understand the shape of the building, you have to do the impossible. Lift it out of its hole. The only visible thing, 2 bars face to face. Standing on the car park base, a sandwich building. A slice of air between 2 slices of building. Under the gardens, the 2 parts of the main building face to face are invisible. The cliffs along the sides are inhabited. These are the facades. The other limits of the building are harder to find. Near to the esplanade, only the end of the paving marks the boundary of the building. The slopes and paths winding over the garden make you forget that this is the roof of a building buried in the landscape. In respecting the overall layout of the site, the architect has withdrawn himself. He has made the architecture disappear. They dug a hole beneath the old stadium, 200 meters long, 65 meters wide, and 25 meters deep. A 2-story car park covers the whole area. 2 buildings stand face to face. Aligned along a central void, containing the gentle slope and the staircase. A Korean-style garden covers both volumes, crisscrossed by paths. I have always considered the modern movement as an extremely Puritan movement, with the idea of using piles. I don't touch the ground. I place the elements as a structure that separates me from the ground, as if the ground were a sort of dirt. In Michel Tournier's book Friday, Robinson Crusoe made love with the earth. He did not make love in the air. For me, the idea of earth is something that helps us to go beyond the Puritanism of the modern movement. It introduces a relationship that is not just geographical or historical, because we come from this earth. We have lived here in this earth. But it is also a relationship which allows us to rediscover in the heart of the earth this possibility to create unthought of places. On one side, a glass facade, views, transparency, light. On the other, a long wall without openings, interspersed by oblique concrete shoulders. A direct consequence of burying the structure, earth is heavier than air. The only sign of the effort needed to withstand the pressure of the earth are the buttresses visible through the whole height of the building. The 70,000 square meters of the design are spread over 6 levels, served by 8 lifts. On levels 6 and 5, parking for 750 cars. On level 4, all the shops and main facilities. On level 3, the communal workrooms and offices. On level 2, classrooms, rooms for the students and offices. On level 1, mostly classrooms. The bottom of the valley corresponds to level 4, the ground floor of the building. A shopping mall with boutiques, cafes, and services. A bank, a cinema, a theatre, a fitness centre. Everything here is to save the students having to go into town. In the upper stories are the university functions, the classrooms, and offices. The most important part of the design is devoted to a function that has yet to be clearly defined, but which nevertheless occupies a third of the built area. It is devoted to stimulating student life. Part of the enclosed space contains the large work or meeting rooms. Part of it the public areas, furnished and without partitions, halls, vast landings, squares, large areas that the students can appropriate to uses yet to be invented. At one end is a huge open room whose ceiling seems to plunge into the earth. At the other end is the building's large public area. Crossed by footbridges, built round a central line of massive pillars, this is an astonishing volume. If you look upwards, you can see in the vaulting punctuated by the landings, the negative of the monumental staircase. We are underneath the steps. Behind the glass wall of the concert hall below, the architecture turns into a spectacle. You might think that it is a simple construction with 2 main buildings placed symmetrically face to face, but the 4 stacked levels reveal a surprising complexity. Each of the levels is different in length, and on level 4, they are no longer face to face, but a single homogeneous space. The 2 large areas under the slope and the staircase make up a single building. A single volume protected and comfortable, where air and light can circulate. the students can walk all the way round inside. It is impossible to know when you are going down the staircase. You think you are walking towards the city, but you are walking on the vault of the underground public space. The valley is long and deep. It opens onto far perspectives. It is on the same scale as a landscape. The city sounds fade until they disappear altogether. The pavement of round stone slabs, designed by the architect, the height of the cliffs, everything indicates a place of peace, far from the world. But have you really left the building? Are you in the grounds of the campus or in the architecture? The strategy, if you can call it that, concerning the void, is not just about the space between two walls. It is, in fact, the disappearance of architecture. I mean, the absence of architecture that will give life and introduce a piece of landscape that is going to link itself to the existing landscape. The void is a material that is absolutely essential to the perception of architecture, to the perception of the dimension of architecture, and to the emotional perception of architecture. Void makes it possible to give birth to something that is, although it isn't. The central void amplifies the confrontation of the two glass partitions, transparency against transparency. The paths taken by the students' campus life becomes a spectacle.
모두 40헥타의 농경지가 침수했습니다. 국도 곳곳에는 낙석과 산사태가 발생해 도로 표지판도 힘없이 부러졌습니다. 오늘 오전 제주 지역에서 관측된 태풍 누사의 순간 최대 풍속.
To stand up to the 150 km/h Korean winds, the two facing partitions are clad by strange metal plates, facade stiffeners, the inverted twin of the concrete buttresses that resist the thrust of the earth. Spaced on 1.33 metre centres, their height varies between 17 metres and 20 centimetres, according to the level of the valley. The simple vertical structure of the stiffeners is not enough. The wind bracing rigidifies the lateral stresses. The whole facade is further reinforced by narrow muntins and small diameter bolts that constitute the carcass of the building inside. They are barred by stiffeners on the outside and reinforced by 2 centimetre metallic plates and bolts. 400 tons of steel just for the carcass of the facades. This device creates alternating views where sometimes the metal predominates, or on the contrary, the transparency of the glass and its reflections. To break the monotony that might be caused by the repetition of such simple elements on such a scale, Dominique Perrault introduced a random layout. The position of the bolted plates, or the arrangement of 2 modules for the window frames. The visual effect is strengthened by the doors marked simply by horizontal metal overhangs, or the ranks of windows that open timidly in the spring, giving rise to new reflections. There, where the garden starts, in line with the roofing, the stiffeners stand out. Not a structural necessity. It is a token from the architect to give the building an unfinished look. The university demanded a lift to give access to the roof garden level. It is the only constructed element that stands out near the top of the staircase. The architect took advantage of this constraint to make an event. He created a light well in which the concrete buttresses are clad with metal plates breaking up the images and sending the brightness of sun and sky down to the most profound depths. The lift well has become a sculpture. The light enters by two glazed facades, and it is the orientation of the valley that determines its illumination. Oriented northeast, southwest, it first of all conforms to the urban considerations, to the traffic flow from the city to the campus. The sun does not illuminate the two facades equally. They produce the same effects, but one of the facades is turned more southwards. It has twice the direct exposure time of the other. Inside the buildings, the architect wanted to help the light to penetrate as far and for as long as possible. He expanded the 4 levels upwards, creating volumes of 3 to 4 meters high. Instead of making each of the floors level with the glazed facade, he suspended them, thus creating a 3-meter empty space across the top. In the facade, the traffic flows. The offset staircases and the galleries make it possible to walk the length of the building at each level. In the depths of the building is another passageway, a large corridor that separates 2 lines of classrooms or offices. All these spaces have to be enclosed, protected from traffic and noise. They need walls. But their occupants don't want a sensation of being closed in. They all need daylight. The architect invented walls that let in milky views of silent ghosts. Translucent double glazing subdues the view but lets in light. The glass has screen-printed white patches. The mask effect is not always at the same intensity. The patches are denser at heights of between 1 and 2 meters, at eye level. In the upper part of the partitions, the glass is completely transparent. The lecture room alongside the galleries benefits from a second-hand natural light. The furthest lecture room, that is separated by 3 walls from the glazed facade, is not illuminated by daylight, but remains visible. Under the earth, near to the sky. Building means constructing walls. So how can we develop walls that remain walls but let light through? that even let air pass through, that give the feeling in this space that while inside one is not at the same time excluded from the outside, and vice versa, and so that there is a sort of porosity, in a certain way, something more aquatic, that could develop around us and would protect us. Because architecture protects, that is its main function, but that does not at the same time separate us, but helps to maintain relations that are relations of diversity, of multiplicity, open but also intimate. The final element of comfort, air. You might think that conditioning the air of a buried building of 350,000 cubic meters is a pharaonic task. The curious metallic chimneys set at the limits of the building draw in air from the surface. The air slowly descends between two concrete walls. Taking advantage of the thermal mass of the Earth, where the temperature variation is slower and weaker than that of the atmosphere, the cold air is heated by several degrees. In summer, the reverse is true. Warm air is cooled by several degrees. In a city with a summer temperature of 40 degrees Celsius and minus 10 degrees Celsius in winter, the system provides an almost 40% reduction in energy consumption. This is a return in values. Being buried gives comfort. In the evening, no lamps light the valley. Light comes from inside the buildings. The metal stiffeners take on the colour of the stone. Like an immense 200-metre-long optical machine, the polymirror stainless steel stiffeners multiply the reflections and break up the movements of the passers-by. The architecture seems to join up with the work of contemporary artists such as Richard Long or Carl André. The power of the optical effects using repetition and randomness, the lightness of the reflections in contrast to the weight of the metal, the scale even of the valley and its facades, all compete to make the building look like an immense installation. Another way of speaking about architecture. We shall find artists' installations that are acts of extreme reduction, very tight, and that will reveal a dimension that outstrips them.
Et qui vont révéler une dimension qui les dépasse. Par exemple, le travail de Long.
For example, Richard Long's work with lines of stones is installed in the great mountain cirques,
dans des grands cirques de montagne,
where obviously it is impossible to take in the site, to measure it, to understand it, to feel it, in fact, except only that it is huge. But when he introduces its line, its dimension, the grand scale, this sort of immense territoriality of the mountain appears, because there is this benchmark, because there is this mark that is made out of the material of the place of which it is part, that is truly integrated, included in the space, that gives it body. But this element of the body is an element of measurement that lets us feel ourselves in relation to the immensity. At night, the landscape of the campus fades away. The brilliant line of the valley measures itself against the scale of the city.